a big thing in a big black thing in front of my face. I wish I didn't say that.
Your hair looks good. Walk me through what happened.
Oh yeah, what an ordeal. So as you know, I had quite longish hair. I was growing my hair out for about 2.5 years, actually. Just to see what it would look like. I wanted to see what I would look like with long hair. It would be nice if there was just an app for that kind of thing, but
I think there
not
probably
really
is.
inaccurate.
It just doesn't look real enough to really satisfy.
No, but you need to get your specific
You
type
need to know
of hair
your
because
hair.
that was the thing.
Yeah.
Because I've got like curly hair, quite curly hair as it turns out, very thick, and
It's way curlier than I think anyone expected, right?
Yeah, are you being serious there?
I am being serious.
Yeah.
Like when I think of you and your hair, I don't think, oh, curly-haired Michael. But
Right,
when
'cause
when
I've always
it
had
actually,
short hair.
Yeah, exactly. And then when you actually grew out, it was way more of a fro than I ever thought it was going to be.
Yeah,
it was,
a bit of a Jufro.
It was very much.
Which I like. I like the curls, and as you can probably see, I've managed to keep them. But this is what happened. So maybe this ties into the next thing. I got a new job.
Well,
So
hey!
I was like,
This is
so-
the aforementioned good news that we
Yes.
haven't talked about yet.
I won't say where the job is. Most people who know me know what it is. If you don't, you can hit me up. But yeah, so got a new job, and I thought, well, fuck this experiment.
Yeah.
And,
Now you're in the real world.
Well, I don't want to go in because this is the thing. I was tying because my hair is so thick. I was just tying my hair back all the time because it was so like in the way. I hated it. It looked good maybe twice in a month. And so I was starting this new job, and I thought I'll get a haircut, but hairdressers have been closed for months. And then the week before I was meant to start this new job, hairdressers opened, but they're all booked out.
Of course, everyone wants their hair did.
Everyone wants their hair did. And so the only option that I had was to go to a barber that was walk-in only.
And that's not normally you're a salon dude.
Well, now that with longer hair, I wanted it done properly.
You don't have
pay
to
it
justify
a bit more.
it. You don't have to. It wasn't like a question of your masculinity. I go to a hair salon. You got very insecure suddenly, where you felt like you needed to explain yourself. Well, I had my hair was a lot longer, and I just wanted to make sure it was.
Well, I'll tell you
taken
why.
care of.
Because I throughout the course of this growing out of the hair, I did drop like $90 on a haircut, and I said that to some people, and they were horrified.
Yeah,
And it was
But
like
they
a
don't-
bit
they don't
indulgent.
understand.
It's a bit vain.
you know, a quality men's haircut. It takes some time. It takes some money. No one's like, oh, I see you got a Jaguar, but that cost a few pretty dollars, didn't it? It's like, well, yes, it did actually, but it looks $1 million.
Yes, but I guess the issue there is it's like vanity. It's like so much about your own vanity.
Sure, but so is a Jaguar.
Did you talk about a Jaguar like the animal?
An animal, yes, like having a pet animal. No, I'm talking about the car. If you're buying like a $200,000 car or whatever, like that's also a vanity statement, isn't it?
I guess it is indirectly. It is. Anyway, so I went to this barber. I waited around for an hour and a half to get in to a place that I didn't necessarily want to go in the first place, and the woman asked me what I wanted to do, and I realized that I hadn't actually thought about what I wanted.
Yeah, you'd had no
because
time.
Because I've been growing out my hair so long, you get a little bit attached to it, and so I think I definitely miscommunicated to her what I wanted done, and I wanted to be a bit conservative with how much she took off, just in case, because I thought you can always take off more.
Uh-huh.
And so I gave her kind of vague instructions. And
Did you give reference points? Were you like, I want it to look like, Jason Schwartzman or...
Yeah. Give me the Schwartzman. So, no, I didn't do that initially, and I should have. But here's the other thing, and this comes back again to my, insecurity or, masculinity or ego problem. I don't like the idea of saying to a hairdresser, hey, I found these photos of men that I want to look like.
Uh-huh.
Can you do that?
Because you feel like they'll say, well, you don't have a Clooney jawline, so it doesn't really matter what we do hair-wise. Nothing's going to fix that.
Right, but the interesting thing is, I had looked those up. I do have
the photos saved on your phone where you're like, this is what I want it to be.
Yeah, but I just didn't tell her because of my ego.
Toxic masculinity, really.
And also,
it has lots of victims.
It includes, most of which ourselves.
Yes. Not a sentence.
Toxic males.
Sure.
So, and also from a hairdresser's point of view, I mean, your job is so much easier if you just have a visual reference point. Yeah. Like, they don't care.
Yeah.
They're not, oh, look at this fucking douchebag wanting to look like James Franco.
Yeah.
That was one of the guys. And so I gave her kind of vague instructions, walked out. You do that thing. You had a long walk back to the car, and I got like a couple of... I'm checking every reflection on the way.
Okay, before you go outside, you're staring at yourself in a mirror through this whole time?
Yeah.
Walk me through your thought process here. Are you like, this is looking good, this is looking good, this is not looking good?
I was thinking it was looking good.
Okay.
It was looking like, in my head, it was looking like Simon Baker. You know, he's got that kind of curly thing that's long.
I haven't kept up with that. Yeah, I haven't kept up with what he's been doing since then. But sure, yeah, of course, I can instantly pull to mind Simon Baker's haircut. Yeah,
I always thought. I mean, I never watched any of those shows, but when my mum did, I always thought he had cool hair. And so, but your hair's kind of wet when you're coming out of the hairdresser, and I don't think get a really, if your hair is still wet, you don't really get a good representation of what your hair's actually looking like. So in my head, I was thinking, this looks pretty good.
It's still wet because they've washed it and then cut it. But they haven't hair dried you? They haven't put any like product in or anything to style it?
No, this is a barber.
Yeah, so they don't put product in or anything.
Well, they don't wash your hair. This is just spray.
So why is your hair... Oh, they're spraying. Okay.
Spraying the water.
But they have a hairdryer, surely.
Yeah, I don't know. It was kind of like a get in, get out kind of thing.
Okay.
So then I'm walking back, checking my reflection on every window, and
but at some point, right? Sorry to cut you off. At some point, at the end of that haircut, she's like, "What do you think?" Right? Like she's showing you the back of the haircut. You're staring at yourself in the mirror, and she says, "All good."
Yeah. So this is the other thing, and this will come back to the end of this story as well. Is that I don't have the heart to say no. This is not what I wanted. So whatever she gives me, I'm going to say yes. Great. Thank you.
Wow.
Anyway, so by the time I get back to my car, I've decided I'm going to have to go get another haircut.
That quick.
But I had it in my head. It wasn't looking that bad. I got home and I was like, this is all right. Yeah.
I saw it. It didn't look that bad to me either.
Yeah. I just didn't express to her what I wanted because I didn't really know.
Yeah.
But then I had a few days with it, and I was like, all right, I have more of an idea of what I want now. Yeah. So then I go to a different barber because I'm not going to go back to the same one just in case the same barber is there, and she goes, oh my God, you don't like my haircut? What the fuck? And I embarrass her. So I went to a completely different barber, and this experience that I had was horrendous. It was like I haven't been waterboarded or, you have been
punched in the face a few times.
I'd take a couple of punches in the face compared to this experience. Wow. What are they called? Prisoners of war? Torture. It was torture, and I'll tell you why. So I booked in for this one and went straight in, and I said to the guy, "I want a scissor cut. I don't want a clipper cut." It's like a young, like 19, 20-year-old kid, kind of smelly. And I said, I want a scissor cut, not a clipper cut. And his face, I'm not kidding you, drops. And I go, can you not do that? And he goes, and the owner, clearly it looks like the owner because he's the one that's, being proactive, greeting you as you come in and stuff. He overhears this and he's cutting someone else's hair. He goes, do you want to swap? And I think, if you have to say that, fucking yes, fucking swap. I don't want to be experimented on. But then this kid goes, nah, it's all good. And I'm going, oh my God. Like, what am I going to do now? What am I going to go, yeah, dude, like, seriously, I'll just wait. Like, I mean, that's probably what I should have done. But again, I'm a fucking pussy and my ego gets the better of me. And I don't even know if it's ego. It's like not wanting to ruffle any feathers. Of ego.
Yeah, it's like I don't want to be a hassle. Whatever that is. It's a lack of assertiveness in that respect, isn't it? It's like this isn't actually what I want, and I'll just tell you that. Yeah,
and have my. I mean, this is one thing as I was growing up which was a thing that my dad always like drilled into me, or not made fun of me, but really got stuck into me if I didn't do it, was being assertive in those type of situations. And it's just, I've never learned it. And so this is the first thing he does. Now, keep in mind that I've, at this point, got, my hair's dry, not dry, but it's like, it doesn't have any moisture in it because I'm not coming out of the shower or anything. It's just like, like now. And the first thing this kid does, I could tell in his head, he was like procrastinating and trying to think of how he was going to do this.
Right.
I was just looking at him intensely in the mirror.
You could see his thought process on his face.
He's like adjusting my chair a few times, up and down and then twisting. And then first thing he does was get a comb through my dry hair and just tries to pull it.
What?
And he's just yanking it. And he's just trying to get the comb through. And I said to him, you might need a wet it. He's like breaking my hair. I said, you might need to wet my hair. It's pretty thick. And he goes, yeah, good call. Yeah, I know, dude. Oh my God. So then for the next half an hour, I just sit there while this guy. And so for this one, I had pictures, and I had pictures of James Franco. I'm just going to say it.
Okay, show me the photo.
Just because he's got the same kind of hair. Oh, this is so embarrassing.
Does he have the same kind of hair?
I think so. He's got like a nice kind of wavy look that I was kind of after.
Okay, yeah. No, I can see that.
A bit of a James Deany thing, but he's got like, I mean, that's kind of what I've got. No, yeah. So I sit there for half an hour while I'm so like stuck and wanting to say something. I'm like going over in my head, just not because like what's coming out is necessarily bad, like I'm ending up with a mullet or anything, but because I can just tell that this guy has no idea what he's doing.
Yeah.
And I don't want to embarrass him. I don't want to say, hey, mate, I'm just going to... Can I
go the other guy?
For the owner to take over with the scissors? And I'm just kind of thinking in my head, I'm hoping that he goes... This is what I had planned. He goes to the bathroom or something, and then I say to the owner, hey, mate, can you take over? I don't want to embarrass this guy. That's what I was hoping for.
Have you ever known a barber to go to the bathroom in the middle of a cut?
Well, I've known them to go take phone calls in the back or something.
Okay.
I don't know. By the way, this guy had massive BO as well. I just had his armpits in my face. It was terrible. And so I just sit through this haircut. It was such a horrible experience. And,
so forgive me because I haven't been to a barber, but like, what's a razor cut by comparison? So why is that? He just basically goes, okay, number 2 on the side, and just cut a bit off the top for length, and that's it, right? Walk out. I think
that's what he's used to. He'd probably do, 10, 15 haircuts a day.
Yeah,
and he's a young guy, so I imagine he's just starting out, and so he knows what he's doing there probably, but with the scissors, it's kind of a massive curveball.
Sure.
And by the way, if he just said, "Nah, I can't really do a scissor cut," cool,
sweet as, yeah,
I don't care. Just don't tell me that you can do it, and then I'm left with something that I really don't want. And anyway, so I sit through this. I'm kind of angry. I'm kind of trying to let him. I'm being really passive aggressive. I'm trying to let him know that I'm not happy with what's happening, but without saying anything. And this is how I let him know. Once the haircut was finished, he said, showed me the back or whatever. I'm like, yeah. I'm just giving him really short answers. I'm not talking to him at all. And I gave him a look. I probably didn't. I probably smiled at him. But in my head, I was like being really mean. I gave him a look and just tapped my card and got the fuck out of there. Anyway, the haircut didn't turn out that bad.
This is what you're currently rocking.
This is currently what I'm with. I'll take a...
I think it looks pretty good.
It does, which I just don't know. He fluked it. He fluked it, and it was
So
pretty much exactly what I wanted.
Yeah, were you watching it all the way through, and you were too caught up in the fear that it was going wrong to notice that it was going okay?
Just the way that we got there,
Yeah, was so unpleasant.
Was so unpleasant and so uncomfortable, and the whole time I'm thinking, there's no way this can turn out well.
Yeah.
And in my head, I'm thinking, I don't want him to do... I just don't want... This is going to be a bad haircut. I just don't want him to take, too much off so that it's like... I'm already thinking of going back to the first barber again for a third haircut in a week. But yeah, it turned out all right. So, yeah. I mean, I'm definitely not going back there, but...
Yeah.
It didn't turn out too bad.
So that, I suppose, the headline there is, congrats on your new job.
Yeah, thanks.
Welcome to Deep Thought, everybody. Yay, we did it. We made it through the Trump presidency. And we're so excited to have you here. It is a podcast, and today, you know what we're talking about. Sitting through the internet with me, my friend Michael, with his snazzy new hair.
Politics.
And my name's Nick. Hi, Nick. Hi. If we have ongoing hair chat, I think we should have a segment called There's a Hair in There. Play school.
Shouldn't it be something like
Snip chat?
Could be Snipchat.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll work it. So
wait, we have a Snipchat. Snipchat is all about parsnips.
Oh yeah,
that's we can't double up. We got a
Snipchat 2
Snipchat
hair
2.
edition.
Look, I'm ready to
eliminate the confusion at the source.
we'll do it after the fact. There's still plenty of parsnip fans out there that deserve another update. Yeah. Sorry, what were you going to say?
I was going to say, you are calling the election right now. Now, we should say that this is 6:30 p.m. on Thursday night.
Correct.
So we don't know really. We were hoping to do a immediately post-election pod.
Yes.
Like we did last time.
Yes, we were all scheduled for yesterday, Wednesday, but factors intervened, which was fine. And as it turned out, the situation was blurry enough to be a little bit uncertain over today, Thursday. That has now clarified quite a lot. Biden seems in a pretty good track to take this thing, even though it is not quite fully counted. And I believe the New York Times has quite a good sort of summary of the situation as it stands. By their estimation, in terms of the remaining 5 states, which need to be which are the swing states that need to be decided, Biden has 27 ways to win. There
Trump has 4.
One
right?
tie, and Trump has 4 ways to win. So, by it's not impossible that Trump walks away with this, but by the way the numbers are going, with the leads that Biden has in the states that still remain, and where the ballots that need to be counted are coming from, it seems a lot more optimistic that Biden is going to get enough electoral college votes to seal this thing.
Yeah, pretty crazy. I put $100. I know you're not a gambling man, but I put $100 on Biden when he was paying $1.50, and the odds changed so rapidly over the course of yesterday afternoon and last night
Right.
that I got so. I bought Biden for $1.50 at $1.50, and then he blew out to $4.20 or something.
Wow.
Like that. So, a couple of one of my friends, Dave, I think he snapped that up when that blew out. He bought it at $4.20.
Yeah.
But it looks like I should make a cool 50 on that one.
Nice.
Hopefully.
So, I suppose the results still being somewhat up in the air, and indeed, by the time I edit this podcast tomorrow and get it out, we will probably have a much clearer picture of whether or not everything we're about to say is true. But as it currently stands, how do you feel about this electoral process? I mean, there's a lot of different angles here. There's the Trump claiming he won. Yeah. There is the ongoing attempts to write this off as fraud by simply counting all of the votes. He's calling that fraud. How are you feeling yesterday as you watched stuff come through? Did you have any time to really pay attention to it?
I went over to Dave's house with a couple of friends, and we drank beers and watched it like it was a football match. It was amazing. And yeah, we watched that Trump speech in which he said absolutely nothing. Did you watch that?
I've seen clips, but I didn't subject myself to it.
It was embarrassing. That's the thing that I feel. I mean, that's one of the things that has really become apparent to me is that the Republican Party, and especially the White House team and the Trump team, are fucking embarrassing. I mean, the way that they are trying to project a strength and this winning kind of persona is just so pathetic, and you can tell in Trump's manner that he's scared. And before the polls closed in the morning, I saw an interview with him, and he was talking about, he was like, winning doesn't come easy to me. I usually win, but
you mean losing doesn't
winning,
come easy?
If I lose, and I could lose. I mean, I just can't. I mean, has anyone ever seen this guy admit any sort of losing?
No.
And yet this is such a direct and obvious example of someone losing something. You lose.
Yeah.
And also because he's the incumbent president, it's like even more losing, because most incumbent presidents win a second term. So this is it's so like poetic in a way that if he does lose this, if he does not win a second term, that he has so famously lost something.
Yeah.
And no one, I mean, he's going to try and dispute it, but he's not going to be able to really do that.
Not only it's not like running for a job and missing out on it, right? It's not like being a presidential candidate and then like Hillary takes it and you didn't get the job. This time it's
kind of like getting fired.
Yeah, exactly. This time he had the job and he got fired. He could have, if the American people wanted, he could have, been given 4 more years of this. And they said, no, we don't like what you're doing. Get out of there. Yeah. That is the most direct, as you say, assault on his ego. And this is a man who has the most fragile of egos, who can never admit anything was ever wrong, that he ever made a mistake, that anything he did was never true. This is a guy who drew a fucking marker loop on a hurricane map so that it supposedly proved that yesterday when he said the wrong states were going to be hit by the hurricane, that actually no, now he has a map which shows that it was going to go there. So fragile. And as a result of everyone knowing that, the reaction he's had, which is that, well, people can't have just voted against me. There must be like a systemic fraud or a like yeah, illegal collusive act to like oust me. It is like a pathological problem where he seems incapable of accepting a failure, right?
And also astoundingly not seemingly grasping the concept of mail-in voting.
Yeah.
And like he's like, we were winning Michigan. Sorry, I keep doing the Trump voice. I want to because I'm not gonna be able to do it for much longer. You know, we were winning Michigan, and then all of a sudden they said we weren't winning. I mean, where did all these votes come from? I'm like, well, they're the mail-in votes that got counted.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
You know, you've got a team of people around you. I mean, that's probably the issue. They're not telling you the information that you should be hearing because you haven't created that environment for them to be able to tell you the truth.
Well, and anyone who told you the truth, you got rid of, right? Like the number of people who've moved in and out of that office in the past 4 years is pretty crazy. But the narrative yesterday a little bit was talking about the democratic failures. And it's true, there were oversights. You know, if Joe Biden had done a better job, you know, appealing to the Latino vote, for instance, maybe they would have carried Florida and the whole thing would have been done yesterday. Those are valid criticisms. If they'd picked a more progressive candidate, maybe that would have, you know, inspired more people to get out. Who knows?
Totally.
All valid. But all of those discussions, they almost ignore or push aside what to outsiders, what to people looking on from other countries, see as this incredibly like broken electoral system, right? Where we have seen so many ways in which the thing is undemocratic. The gerrymandering problem.
I interrupted you as you were explaining the thing I was about to ask you, but is it really a broken system?
I think that's very true. I mean, I think the numbers now, assuming that Biden gets elected, again, we don't know. It could all be shown to be an incredible waste of time tomorrow if the votes come in differently. But I think it's looking decent. If that was the case, 7 of the last presidential elections, the Democrats had a high number of popular votes, like just raw, I vote Biden. But because of the nature of the Electoral College and where those votes are, they didn't get enough to secure the presidency. And so the simple fact that a basic majority doesn't earn you power is, I think, undemocratic, right? I think that's a fairly fundamental aspect of democracy, right? Is that the most popular idea or the most popular candidate gets in, right? That's a fairly basic tenet of how we do society, right? So all of this stuff where it's like, okay, you need a certain kind of voter ID and that disenfranchises, members in minority communities. We're going to get rid of polling booths so that you have to be able to spend 8 or 9 hours queuing up in order to be able to pass it, cast a vote. If you can't do that because you've got work or can't find the time because you've got kids or you don't have the money to drive over to the nearest polling station, then you don't get to vote, right? Or, well, maybe we'll vote by mail. Well, we'll defund the fucking postal service so that all your ballots get delayed, and then if it arrives after election day, well, we'll just say that those don't count anymore. Like, all the number of systemic issues here, I think within the American, population, it's certainly known and talked about, but at the same time, every time they do this kind of post-election analysis, or indeed, during the counting process, there's all this galaxy brain takes, like, how did Joe Biden lose this? How does this all go wrong? It just always seems to overlook the number of ways in which it was a fucking uphill battle. Like, it is insane the extent to which that process is just fucked, right? Like, we take for granted the idea that every citizen in Australia or every citizen in New Zealand gets to vote. No one's trying to stop you voting. And yet that's the way of things over there.
Yeah, we make things relatively easy for people here and where you are. But it seems like in America, they're putting up hurdles. Like, we don't want you to vote, but go vote, but we're going to make it tough for you. But interestingly, there's been a higher voter turnout. So Trump is actually getting more votes than he did last election.
Yeah.
And Joe Biden has gotten more votes than any candidate ever.
In history, yeah.
In history. But interestingly, I just thought I'd bring this up, that the black male vote for Trump actually increased by 13% from 2016. From 13% to 18% this year. And the black female vote for Trump doubled from 4 to 8%.
But the black female vote was 90% Biden, though, was the thing. So those changes are valid, but at the same time, the predominant direction of the black community was definitely Democratic. But I do take your point.
Sure. It is the point is only that it is interesting that over the last 4 years, Trump has been able to appeal to double the amount of black females in the United States than 2016.
Yeah. I mean, the most insane part of yesterday, I think, was seeing 60 plus million people decide that, I want to see him in power again, right? Like, that's the thing which was so just unbelievable. And, it's hard to completely understand someone else's life, but, from an outsider perspective, like, just the number of fucking things, even if you were like a centrist Republican, like a Republican who does it for economic purposes or whatever, looking at that guy and being like, just a walking scandal. How can you bring yourself to still do it? Why not just sit it out,
Yeah, it's. I was thinking about this today. Like, it's so interesting that the world, if you flick onto the BBC News or ABC News, I mean, both of those networks don't really have an agenda, but you can kind of get the sense from them that they're kind of like, how does this guy even have a chance? Like, the rest of the world kind of looks at America in that way, like, how is Trump your guy? How do you explain that? How do you explain that Americans love him so much? I mean, he's clearly a media genius. He's convinced the poorest people in America that he's one of them and that he's fighting for them. I mean, that's genius in a way. But how do you explain the world looking at American politics, thinking, we don't even understand this, and yet people in America are just like, fuck yeah, Donald Trump.
Well, I mean, I think there's obviously so many factors in that. There's one, which is that the media ecosystem in America is so partisan that if you're in the Fox News world, you just don't hear any other perspective outside of it. So you don't really...
Wouldn't you say that it's partisan both ways? CNN is partisan as well.
For sure. CNN's always interested in entertainment before journalism. So they will try and do things the most sensational way. They will, they want people to tune in. They want, ratings. They're not a particularly beloved institution, I don't think. But yes,
MSNBC, I mean, you can take your pick.
Yes, yeah. I that was just an aside, I suppose. MSNBC, of course, yes, is a left-leaning network. But the thing is that I think if you're in that bubble, like the degree of partisan slant of MSNBC versus Fox News, it's not equivalent. Fox News is a degree of like anti-reality that is not comparable to MSNBC's interpretation of reality, if you know what I mean. Like MSNBC will see the facts or the situations through a lens in which, their liberal policies are reflected.
They're more reasonable.
But the Fox News perspective on things is literally, it's not connected to the rest of the world. So if you're in that, then you don't really ever see anything outside of that, any sort of messaging from the president about it is, the press are the enemy of the people, they're beating me up, all this kind of thing. You just kind of, you're not incentivized to go look elsewhere, right? Unless you take that leap. So there's that, like, kind of, this is an unfair word, but like there's the cultish aspect of it, whereas like for those people, if you're in it, then you've got to be in. And then if you're in it so hard that it's like something you've invested in or something that you've voted for or something, there's that thing of like, it's very hard for any person in any circumstance to admit you're wrong, right? It takes a certain degree of, intellectual rigor / emotional fortitude / sensitivity, to be able to look at something you did and go, yeah, I fucked that up. I was off base. I didn't do the right thing. And that was, that had consequences. That in any circumstance, in any context, people struggle to do that because it's a degree of humility, which is really difficult. And so I think there's also a part where it's like, fuck, I'm on this roller coaster now and I can't get off, because getting off means confronting a truth that is unpalatable, right? It's confronting an identity issue that is not something you want to, have to reckon with. Why did I let this person convince me of things? Why could I not see, the problems in his behavior or his manner or his, policies? So that's quite difficult. And then I think finally, when you look at the votes and it says something like, 48% to 51% or whatever the final tallies are going to be, right? You think, oh my God, half of America said they want this guy back. And sure, it might be like 65 million people or something like that, 70 million people. I'm not sure what the final totals are sitting at the moment. But the other thing you got to remember is that it's so hard to vote for so many people that those counts are not actually representative of the entire population of the US. Some of the polling that we saw going into this election season was, Trump is historically unpopular. He's got an approval rating of 35% or something, and Biden is the preferred president by like 55%. And then you come into the election, you're like, it's basically 50-50. How did that happen? It's because of all of these institutional voting suppression techniques that have taken place, where people might have this opinion, but because they can't get to the polls, they can't wait for 8 hours, they need an ID they don't have, they've been gerrymandered into a district that doesn't count, all of these kind of systemic issues then prevent them from actually having their say. So it's much closer in person because a whole bunch of people were unable to actually get to cast a vote,
Right. Well, here's a follow-up question. How do you explain the disparity between the polls and what actually happens on voting day? Because we've seen it again happen that the polls have no idea what's happening.
I think that they are definitely, somewhat mediocre. I'm going to defer that question just a little bit because they're still counting. We just said, Trump was an idiot for making claims about things when the counts haven't come in. I'm going to wait and see what some of these final tallies end up looking at before I, try and compare them to the polls.
Right, but the polls were predicting a Biden landslide, and that hasn't happened.
Were they predicting a landslide, or were they saying it's a possibility? They said that, a lot of them would say that Biden would win. And there's an aspect here, of course, which is that the pandemic made things, it threw a whole unpredictability wrench into the works. So I think there is probably a degree of latitude needed to the poll people to try and having to try and work out how that was going to affect things this year when it's like not historically happened before is quite a complicated task. That's not excusing everything, but
it's interesting to think. I mean, has the coronavirus somehow, helped Joe Biden? I mean, it probably has. Do you think the coronavirus has cost Donald Trump the election? You can imagine.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. I mean, it completely derailed any other messaging he could try and get across in that last month. It crashed the economy.
He could have easily, if he was up to it, it could have won him the election, decidedly.
Yeah, we talked about that last podcast. If he'd actually done a good job, if he'd taken it seriously, a good handling of crises endears a leader to its population. That's the ultimate irony. Yeah. But I think it probably did end up costing him the election because his only thing that he liked to parrot on about was the economy, and the economy cratered. People really suffered this year. They didn't get, financial support. They lost their jobs, all this kind of thing. It's a really bad look to be entering an election season and being like, you want more of this, right? And what this is I've been locked in my house for 8 months and I don't have a job. I think it probably didn't help, to say the very least.
Yeah. Well, thank you, coronavirus.
I mean, that is the ultimate tragedy of it, is that in the midst of all of it, on election day, there were 100,000 new cases of coronavirus in the US and like 1,200 deaths.
And they're going into winter.
And they're going into winter, and it's getting worse. And like, again, that backdrop, you just look at it as an international citizen looking on at the world and being like, he has cost like 240,000 US lives now. How many people have died? 220,000. The like insanity of being like, you know what? I think he's done a pretty good job of this. It's like,
that's the baffling thing. I mean, he still got more votes than he did last time.
Yeah, 240,000 total deaths currently.
So it's still not that big of an issue for a large majority of Americans.
I mean, I'm curious, do you know, is the increase in votes proportional to the increase in US population?
Oh, I don't know. I think I don't. I have no idea.
Because that could be
an increase in US population been.
I don't know. It's probably gone up a few million people in the past 4 years.
Yeah, but 4-year-olds can't vote.
Yes, Michael, but there would have been 16-year-olds last time who couldn't vote who now can, right? You understand that everyone ages, yes?
I regret asking that. People say that there are no stupid questions.
There are no stupid questions.
There are, though, because
There are no stupid questions. There are just snide answers.
Yeah. That was a joke.
You just pulled a Trump. I was being sarcastic.
Develop a sense of humor, Jesus, Nick.
Yeah. Since we're sort of in the realm of it, did you see the Hunter Biden news? So this was this other thing, right? This was the email thing. Was the
now was that
trying to make it a bit of a scandal in October so that Biden's credibility was shot in the lead up to the election, right? What were you going to say? I'm sorry.
I was going to say this is the one that was almost certainly planted by Russia.
Yeah. So here's what I wanted to dive into. I don't want to go into the whole backstory of the Hunter Biden thing because it's fucking absurd. But here is the most fascinating thing. This is an NBC News article. It is in the chapter title if you want to click and read it yourself. I'm going to skim over it a little bit. But 1 month before a purported leak of files from Hunter Biden's laptop A fake intelligence document about him went viral on the right-wing internet, asserting an elaborate conspiracy theory involving former Vice President Joe Biden's son and business in China. The document, a 64-page composition that was later disseminated by close associates of Donald Trump, appears to be the work of a fake intelligence firm called Typhoon Investigations, according to researchers and public documents. This is the fascinating thing. The author of the document, a self-identified Swiss security analyst named Martin Aspen, is actually a fabricated identity, according to analysis by Disinformation Registered, who also concluded that Aspen's profile picture was created by an artificial intelligence face generator. The intelligence firm that Aspen listed as his previous employer said no one by that name had ever worked for the company and no one by that name lives in Switzerland, according to public records and social media searches. So this, we can go into the depth of it. You can click on the link if you want to read it. But here's the headline, right? There's this conspiracy theory trying to smear the Biden campaign. And to do it, they made a fake identity. But more than that, they didn't just put this document out. They computer generated, they used AI to make a face that doesn't exist and put that as the profile picture, claimed that this was the real human. This is the future that we're living in now, where fake information is not just backed up by a dodgy website and here's the profile and history. It is accompanied by those face generating AI algorithms, so that if you were to click on that profile picture and search for it on the internet, you don't find anything else. It's not a stock image that you've used. It's not a real person you've claimed to be but isn't. It is going to get no other hits. And so passes an initial sniff test, right? If you were trying to verify the authenticity of this thing.
Wow.
What do you think about the intrusion of this fake face technology into our real world politics?
Well, it's kind of scary. I just watched a documentary on, it's called The Perfect Weapon, and I highly recommend it. A little dense, but it goes into kind of, that Seth Rogen movie, The Interview, and the kind of North Korean hack. It's about hacking, hacking, governments hacking each other.
Right.
And it's kind of ties into a little bit of this with Iran and Russia influencing the elections.
Yeah.
And the thing that kind of scared me learning from that documentary was that the US officials that they interviewed were like, we had no idea that Russia and Iran cared this much about what happens in our election. That's the interesting thing, that Russia has offices, buildings even, dedicated to creating memes, discrediting Hillary Clinton in 2016, and creating disinformation and putting it out, even to the point where they're scheduling protests with Black Lives Matter and white supremacists at the same time, so that they clash.
Yeah,
that shit has to be the scariest shit in the world. They care that much.
There's going to be a very interesting, retrospective on this era in which I think it's fairly reasonable to say we learned that Russia basically never treated the Cold War as over. They just changed what kind of war it was from a weapons, a hot war, a hot Cold War to a, technological Cold War, in which the sabotage that they were pulling was much more nefarious and much less, noticeable, and yet arguably more effective. We know, the Cambridge Analytica thing from the 2016 election. We know that these botnets and things were in place. We know that they gained access to polling systems. They have done a full, years-long technological attack on Western democracy, and in America in particular.
And you can imagine how, being Putin, how Trump is such a gift to you, and why
such a gift.
You've got such an investment because he's putty in your hands. Because guys, with egos like that are so easy to manipulate.
Yeah. Well, and yes, absolutely. But also, he is so like fallible, and he is so compromised. Like, he owes hundreds of millions of dollars. He, has a history of, allegedly, I suppose, like seeing sex workers and getting people up to his hotel room, and all this kind of very basic stuff, which any sort of, intelligence organization would flag as like, this is a problem. This is a problem. This is how people get compromised. But yes, doubly so. Like, Trump is just the absolute gift, right?
Yeah, it's scary, and it's also scary because, like these government officials were saying in this documentary, like, why do they care so much? Like, why? Like, that to me is the scary part. That they have, not that they are trying to influence foreign elections, that they feel like they need to.
Excuse me. Well, that would be... Excuse me. That...
Please leave that in. Please leave that in. We could have a new segment called Nick's Gassy. A nice jingle, and it just plays every time you burp or something.
I didn't want to start again before I knew it was over. So I was just
I thought you were waiting for me to finish, and I was like, should I keep talking? But no, just a belch.
Yeah, I just didn't want to start, and then immediately had to be like, oh God. It happened again. I don't remember what I was going to say now.
I said something about why do those foreign countries feel like they need to?
Thank you. Yeah. I think, one of the big ones is that during the Cold War and in the aftermath, there were sanctions placed on Russia. They still can't trade with a lot of countries around the world, There were issues when they, what's the word? Annexed Crimea, right? Like they've done, serious kind of antagonistic shit on the world stage, and they have suffered, economic and other penalties as a result. So if you can get a leader into a position in which they might be indebted to you or favorable to you, then there's a chance they will lift that kind of restriction, and you can benefit economically and politically from a easier go of things.
I mean, I get that to a certain degree, but what I don't get is the concept of wanting to gain more power. I just fundamentally don't understand why. I get, you want the best for your country, but Russia and China are both vying for some sort of superpower position, and I just can't process why they care about that.
I guess that they see, it's a culture war, isn't it? It's the idea that, if other people are out there, I mean, this it's a loose analogy, so forgive me, but like in the same way that, a religious person might fight against the legalization of abortion, say, or the decriminalization of drugs because morally or culturally they feel like it is antithetical to what they believe and what they want the world to be, right? In the same way, China, I think, views Western democracy as a threat to what they want the world to be, right? Same with Russia. They see these sanctions on them as preventing them from shaping the world the way they want it. And, to be fair, America doesn't want to cede control of that because they like being, quote unquote, the leader of the free world, the linchpin of Western democracy, all that kind of thing. So it's a culture war at the heart of it. It's a technological war. It's sometimes a a hot war with actual guns firing. But at the core of it, right, it is an idea about what is the world, what do we think it should be, what are our people entitled to, what are we as a country entitled to, and if you're going to stand in our way, well then you're our enemy.
Yeah, I get that concept broadly speaking, but boiling it down, we're talking about like a few individuals deciding like the direction of a country. You know, that's the thing that I don't get. Like at an individual level, there are people in charge that are trying to move China forward or trying to move America. You know, we want to be like that's the part that I don't get. That there are individuals trying to move the country.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
I mean, it is. I do understand what you're saying. That it's odd in a weird way that the lives of 8 billion people can sort of be shaped by 3 men.
I guess it's a distillation, of the country's values, but it also feels like that, especially in places like China or Russia or America now, that the people in charge are not a reflection necessarily of the country or the people in the country that they are in charge of, but they are more like they're running a dictatorship or is autocracy the right word?
Sure, yeah. It's about holding on to their own power at that point, not servicing the will of the people.
Yeah, and so that's the disconnect for me that I just can't wrap my head around, really.
Yeah, it isn't. Yeah, it's a very interesting and complex area, the idea of eroding democracy, because I mean, China is one thing and Russia is sort of a different thing as well, though they have increasingly become, the Putin show, where previously they had some semblance of elections, I believe. But watching America, that's a fascinating historical event, isn't it? Like, there'll be books here, 100 years on, about how they went from a functioning democracy, for the most part, even one with its own weird electoral college quirks, to one that was corruptible, right? And, I'm not saying they're unique in that worldwide, but it is a fascinating journey, really, to see how easily things can fall apart and how representative democracy can go from the expected norm to actually, well, I don't have to follow those rules, and like nothing happens.
Totally. But do you think so? Let's play this out. If Biden wins, do you think that America restores itself or gets back to some sort of normality, or at least pre-Trump normality? I mean, guys like Lindsey Graham and Mitch McConnell, I just can't. They want to go back to fucking, the Bush years. Sure,
yeah.
They don't like Trump. They deal with Trump. They have put up with Trump. He happens to be their guy. They're not happy about it. I don't think that's true. In the Senate as well.
I don't know that that's true. Mitch McConnell has said that his ability to pass 200, 300 judges, whatever it's been in this Trump term, has been one of the greatest highlights of his career. He got 3 Supreme Court justices. That was, he'll die happy knowing that
the Republicans play dirty. They've always been good at that.
Yeah.
If you can call it good. Maybe the Democrats need to play more dirty, but you also don't want to. You don't want to match, the level that you're kind of disgusted with.
But that's the most sort of interesting fundamental issue about the ideological battle between the left and the right in that country, at least. It's true to a certain extent in other places, but our electoral system, Australia's electoral system, they're all much more objective and rigorous, and from the democratic point of view, the younger, more progressive Democrats coming up in this party have been advocating for much more aggressive reactions to the Republicans. And I think some of the older institutional Democrats are stuck in this mindset that, this is a good faith fight, and they have certain beliefs and we have certain beliefs, and at the end of the day we just, we can talk it out. And I think the evidence suggests that people like Mitch McConnell have actually no interest in being, consistent in terms of their ideology. You only have to look at the Supreme Court thing as an example, where they refused to appoint Obama's nomination 8 months out from the election because it was an election year, and then they pushed through Amy Coney Barrett in literally the few weeks before this election.
They don't give a fuck.
They don't give a fuck.
You can play the tape.
Yeah.
In whatever year it was. You can play the tape of me saying that this comes up again.
Yeah.
And then you play the tape and they're like, I don't care about it.
I don't care. Why? Yeah. That is totally within their abilities. And the Democratic response to that is like, oh, well, I guess. Yeah. And if I was, the progressive members at the base of that party looking at the 75, 80-year-old, leaders in that thing who are just like, oh, well, we couldn't, yeah. I would be so fucking frustrated. Like, there is
impression of the Democrats.
It's like my Nancy Pelosi, right?
No, she's tough as nails, though.
But she's so ineffective. Like, honest to God, the strongest argument as to why Trump waltzed back into this is because they decided not to make a big deal out of every single one of his scandals, right? He has had so many fucking scandals. So
that's the
many.
thing. Like, what do you do when there's that many?
Well, if you are Fox News, you can invent a scandal and you can treat it for 6 months as the biggest fucking thing of the year. The Hillary's emails things. How many fucking Benghazi hearings did she sit through? All of this stuff. The Republicans.
She's not the media.
No, my point is the Republicans can manufacture outrage or stick to a political guns in order to, stand their ground and get concessions from the Democrats. But the Democrats don't have that bone in their body to go, you fucking, you solicited help from Ukraine in order to improve your electoral chances. And then bring in all of the other impeachable shit he did, that still holding, assets and making a profit off the presidency. That's against the fucking law. It's been against the law for 4 years now, and they've never done anything, right? If the Democrats had the same dogmatic drive to make hay out of every single issue, then I think they would have had a stronger case of convincing average American voters that Trump was a complete fuckwit. But because they sort of skate through this stuff oh well, we tried, we could have refused to hold this vote for Amy Coney Barrett, but we'll do the right thing. They just get away with this shit.
But don't you think when things are coming at you, the volume of shit that they've had to deal with is unprecedented.
But in what other...
They run the risk of being drowned out. I mean, they bring up every little thing. It's the Democrats have got another fucking thing to complain about.
Yeah, that's the entire Republican playbook. In what other country does an actual illegal scandal not count as valid, ammunition in the fight for, election, for seats, for representation? In what other place would you be like, oh, my opponent committed an actual crime on the books, dead to rights. He admitted it on camera. And you go, well, we could do something about that, but maybe we'll just not do it again.
I'm loving these personifications of the Democrats, by the way. Amazing. So if Trump loses, could he legitimately get put away?
Yeah,
is that a thing?
Yeah, there was an article in the Guardian.
For real. Could he go to jail?
Yeah, there is a article in the Guardian talking about exactly that. the likelihood that one of the reasons he doesn't want to be out of office is because he can be like prosecuted.
Well, you said this last pod, but I mean, is it realistic or is it just like one of those things that
I'm going to bring it up
like
so
to
that
say?
I'm just going to grab it. So there was an article in The Guardian the other day called "The Real Reason Trump is Terrified of Losing the Presidency, Fear of Prosecution." And this went through a little bit of the specificity as to the actual realistic way that this could be an actual threat to him. The author here, Samer Shehata, says that the United States is hardly an autocracy. It might better be described as a flawed democracy, but its president behaves
Autocracy.
A flautocracy. There you go. That's quite good.
It was right there.
It was right there. It behaves a lot like an autocrat, and it's worth remembering as the election looms that autocratic leaders do not like to give up their power. There's lots of benefits that accompany political office, but there's another more important reason they often try to retain power almost at any cost, even after losing elections or completing their terms. After 2 decades of researching and writing about autocratic politics in the Middle East, I call this the autocrat's dilemma. Losing power can expose them to accountability, prosecution, and potential jail time. As a result, autocrats are often willing to break laws, rig elections, create chaos, and even use violence to retain power. So if Trump loses the election, there may be calls to investigate and prosecute him for possible crimes involving obstruction of justice, violating the emolument clause of the Constitution, that's the holding assets and making money off the presidency, and or tax fraud, among others. Citizen Trump would face investigation without the luxury of executive privilege or the legal chicanery of the Attorney General William Barr, who has acted more like Trump's personal lawyer than the nation's top law enforcement official and has protected him. So Trump has even more reason to lie, cheat, and sow discord in order to retain office, because losing the White House could land him in court or even behind bars. They go on a bit here to talk about how the Mueller didn't produce a smoking gun, proving that Trump conspired with Russia, but he also didn't exonerate him. And after the investigation, over 1,000 former federal prosecutors from both parties signed a letter stating that Trump's conduct, as described in the investigation, would warrant multiple felony charges for obstruction of justice if it weren't for his policy, as in the Office of Legal Counsel's policy, of not indicting a sitting president. So, anyway, there's plenty of reason to suspect that there are states, there are attorneys general in various places where his businesses operate that are probably sitting on strong cases and waiting for him to leave office so that they can, begin the proceedings.
Wouldn't that be unreal just to see Trump in handcuffs?
Yeah, I mean...
And it's funny as well because when he got elected, people were speculating, including me and probably you, that he even wanted the presidency in the first place.
That's it, right?
And it's kind of... I mean, I feel like I have no evidence to back this up, but I feel like there's probably an element of that, knowing him as a person, especially over the last 4 years, that there's probably an element of truth in there that he wanted to win the game, but he was not up for the responsibility or the dedication of the job of the presidency.
Well, and I think also morally, personality. I don't know the exact phrasing here, but he didn't even have the interest in other people. He didn't actually care about where America was going, what America, and its citizens were suffering, what could be better, what needed to change, what challenges and international crises it faced. He didn't actually care about America, right? The only reason he went for this thing was self-serving.
Yeah. The power.
The power, but also the like ego boost and also the proving Obama wrong and also the like strip down everything that he built
Seth
because
Meyers.
that man made fun of me. Seth Meyers, yeah.
Yeah, but how funny if now he's clinging on to the presidency because the only thing separating him between him and prison time.
Yeah.
Crazy world, man. Like, can you imagine just going back to 2014 and just explaining what 2020 was like?
It's
Like,
so...
just try and imagine explaining to yourself.
Yeah.
Imagine trying to explain on this podcast to each other.
Yeah.
I'm like, hey, Nick, I'm from the future.
Yeah.
We're in year 2 of the pod. Things are going great.
Year 2.
We've got 5 listeners, up from 4 last year.
Yeah.
It's a 20% upgrade.
Yeah.
Just came to tell you that the Donald Trump, who's the president of the United States, and also global pandemic that has shut the entire world down for the majority of the year.
Isn't it so weird? That is... I don't mean to break what was, the potential there for a comedic sketch, but like what you said actually really made me think. Like if I had explained to myself even a year ago, by the way, next year, there's going to be a virus that ravages the earth, kills 1 million people. You won't be able to leave your house. You'll be just like entirely at the whims of an unseeable enemy and subject to the political decisions of everyone in the world. Like it is actually a very good point how fucking crazy that is. Like if you had told like in December last year, by the way, just write off next year in terms of like where you want to go or like going home to Oz. Really just enjoy it while you're back home for Christmas because you won't get there next year because of the pandemic that kicks in. You'd be like, what the fuck?
Yeah. And especially here, and I wasn't going into a sketch or anything. This is something I've thought about.
Yeah.
Even just everyone in Victoria is wearing a mask.
Yeah.
Everyone. I mean, if someone's not wearing a mask, you stand out. That's how weird it is.
Yeah.
If you're not wearing a mask, you look like a crazy person.
Yeah.
And just the idea of just going out to the house and everyone is wearing a mask. I mean, imagine if you just woke up from a coma and just walked outside and just saw everyone wearing masks. You'd be like, what the fuck has happened?
Yeah. You know what? Statistically, genuinely, there are people who woke up from comas this year, right?
I want to talk to those guys.
I want to talk to them. Now, speaking of
It'd
COVID...
be like talking to our past selves.
Yeah. Now, speaking of COVID, just because we're sort of on this track, how do you feel about some science news?
Oh, dude.
Okay, let me give you some science news.
Love some science news.
Play the jingle. It's that time. Time for science news.
Okay, every week I'm trying to act as more enthused than the last.
That's good, but I do feel like it's also genuine. It's like one of those things where if you force yourself to smile, then you start to feel happy.
Sure, I know. I genuinely love science news.
Yeah, this could also be. What was that?
I just said I would love to do a science news myself one day.
Oh, you think you could do a science news?
I mean, I would like to think that I could do a science news.
It's a pretty high bar over in science news.
You did a weird news.
Yeah, again, there's a pretty high bar in science news.
Yes.
Well, you know what? This could actually be a weird news. This is in the realm. It's a weird science news.
You've just fucked me twice then.
I'm a double fucker.
You've double fucked me. You're going to do a science news, then you switched it, and now you're going to do my segment again.
Let's call it a science news.
All right.
But just know there's an asterisk.
I'm going to have a science news next week.
We'll see about that. Okay, here we go. Reuters Reuters? Reuters.
Not Reuters. Not Reuters, sorry.
You said
What is this, Hooters?
Well, Reuters is exactly the same kind of implementation, isn't it?
It's like Hooters, but for journalism.
Yeah. Reuters says Denmark plans to cull its mink population after a coronavirus mutation spreads to humans.
What the fuck is a mink?
A mink is, ermine, stoat, those little weaselly animals. Okay.
I was picturing a reindeer for some reason.
Okay, you're wrong. Everyone on the podcast who hasn't heard of minks before, have a look at the image. There's a picture of a mink.
Minks. Oh, you can. Wow, that's crazy. Look at that.
Look at what?
It just popped up on my thing.
Yeah, I sent you a chat message on Skype.
It just came up all over your face.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Weird.
Yeah.
A mink. Okay. Mink is an animal.
A weasel.
It's like a weaselly animal.
Ooh.
Okay, so here's the story. Copenhagen. Denmark will cull its mink population of up to 17 million after a mutation of the coronavirus found in the animals spread to humans, the Prime Minister said Wednesday. Health authorities found virus strains in humans and in mink, which showed decreased sensitivity against antibodies, potentially lowering the efficacy of future vaccines. We have a great responsibility towards our own population, said Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen. But with the mutation that has now been found, we have an even greater responsibility for the rest of the world as well. The findings, which have been shared with the WHO, were based on laboratory tests by the State Serum Institute, the Danish authority dealing with infectious diseases. They are, calling for investigations into the number of people infected with coronavirus from mink that have had some genetic changes in the virus. The Danish authorities are investigating the epidemiological and virological significance of these findings. Authorities in Denmark said 5 cases of the new virus strain had been recorded on mink farms and 12 cases in humans, and that there were between 15 and 17 million mink in the country. Outbreaks at mink farms have persisted in the Nordic country, the world's largest producer of mink furs, despite repeated efforts to cull infected animals since June. So Denmark's police, army, and home guard will be deployed to speed up the culling process. They are basically killing.
You know what that means? Like what are the specifics though? The army's gonna go kill a ferret.
They're gonna kill 17 million mink because
How you guys doing it? Gassing them?
I'm gonna. It's a very good question. I don't know. I presume they probably do the same thing that they normally do when they kill them. Like it's a fur trade, which is kind of fucked in the first place, to be honest.
Oh, yeah.
But they're going to just go through and be like, nah, all dead. No coronavirus in this thing anymore. We're going to kill every mink in this country.
Oh, it's going to be a genocide.
It is a mink genocide.
Oh, boy. I feel bad for minks, but also you ugly, so you deserve it.
Beautiful fur.
Beautiful fur, though. Beautiful coats.
Beautiful coats.
I wonder if they'll use all the fur.
Well, I guess they probably will, right? They would just have an oversupply.
Kind of be insulting to the mink community to not use the fur.
Yeah, but see, here's the economic problem. Now you have 17 million mink around. You've got all of this oversupply. Prices go down. Difficult
Not
problems.
valuable anymore. Then you have to go back to foxes.
Yeah, then you're back to the fox problem. I have a second story here, which I also thought was kind of interesting, and it's completely unrelated.
Double science news.
I've got a double.
I'm serious?
I'm going to double fuck you. I told you.
All right.
This one I think you'll also find interesting. Mm-hmm. In a Tibetan cave, archaeologists find evidence of a mysterious ancestor. This is an article on stuff that I think my friend Fee put in the group chat. Researchers from Australia, working in a holy cave high on the Tibetan plateau, have unearthed a cache of stone tools, animal bones, and DNA from modern humans' most mysterious ancestor, the Denisovans. These are cousins of Neanderthals. Have you heard of Denisovans before?
No.
I hadn't heard of them either. I didn't realize that they were members of our family tree that we're still like learning about. Denisovans contributed about 5% of Aboriginal Australians' DNA, yet we have never found a single complete fossil, just fragments of fingers and jaw. We know only that they lived across Asia between 45 and 400,000 years ago, often at altitudes that most modern humans could not survive. Modern humans encountered them sometime after we left Africa, but then they disappeared, leaving almost no trace. Now, in 2019, archaeologists tentatively linked a fragment of jawbone found in this cave to Denisovans, but many experts were skeptical. There was no DNA proof. Now the researchers are back with a new report in Science, backed by a team of Australian specialists, and they have DNA. They're calling it a slam dunk. The dating's really secure. Basically, recent research suggests that our family tree has many branches and they fold back on themselves and intermingle. Modern humans left Africa, perhaps 200,000 years ago, but they did not head over here directly. The world was already teeming with other species of humans, from Neanderthal and Denisovans and Homo floresiensis, floresiensis, found in Indonesia. And they all interbred. And modern Tibetans, here's the interesting thing. Modern Tibetans have a Denisovan gene from this other species of human, which helps them survive at high altitude. Oh. So the reason that they are comfortable living in that high, low oxygen, high altitude area is a direct result of the interbreeding between modern humans and other, like, Homo, XYZ breeds. Cool. Isn't that kind of, like, fascinating, the actual real world implications of the crazy other varieties of species of humanity that once existed?
Yeah, it's crazy that we've never heard of these guys.
Yeah. And why did we survive when all of these other ones became extinct? What was special about us,
Yeah, bit of a loose tangent here, but, not really. But I'm a big star watcher guy. Could have said that in less words. Chose not to.
Yeah.
I love looking up the stars. One of my favorite things. And Emma, the other night, I was looking up at the stars. I was pointing out where all the planets were, because the other night you could see Jupiter, Saturn, Neptune, Uranus and Mars. Uranus and Mars all up in the sky at the same time. And I was trying to explain to Emma. She was like, "What? Because every time I go up to the roof or whatever, I point it out to her, and she just doesn't care." And I was like, "I don't get that you don't care." She was like, "Well, explain to me why you care so much."
Yeah.
And it was like, good question, and forced me to think about it. And I think what it was, and we'll come back to this science news, was that when I look up at the stars and I see Jupiter in the sky, even though it's like a speck, what I see there is, first of all, that anyone that you've ever heard of in human history has been able to look up and see the moon or Jupiter. Like Jesus looked up and saw the same moon that we're looking at.
Yeah.
So there's that. Galileo, all those guys. All the gang. Obama.
The whole A-team. Yeah. Did you know that Obama, when he looks up in the night sky, he sees the same moon that we see?
Yeah. Trump sees his reflection somehow, but yeah. But Jupiter is responsible for all life on Earth, and this is how I'm tying it back in. That Jupiter, because of its gravity, was able to create this asteroid belt, which has helped protect the Earth from all these flying space objects, because the asteroid belt cleans up all these all this kind of space debris. But it also one I don't know what to call it, meteor or asteroid, flung out of the asteroid belt, hit the Earth, killed off the dinosaurs, which led to the rise of tree mammals.
Yeah.
Us.
Yeah.
So the thing that baffles me and that really I feel like connects me to the Earth is that those speckly stars up in the sky that look like nothing are actually very much a part of who, like, they have given me the ability to look back at them.
They are the forefathers. They they begat us.
Right. And so when you, yeah, it was a loose tangent, wasn't it?
No, I very much like that. I think that's a very quintessential deep thought, isn't it? That the diversion into the sense of self, the history of humanity, and astrophysics all at once. I think that was rather beautiful, actually.
Thanks. When you say about the evolution and you know, recognizing, you know, a species of human beings that we haven't really heard about, I don't know. There's a part of me that just, like, it's just thrilling to think about that stuff, and you really feel connected, and you feel like an animal. And I like feeling like an animal sometimes.
Yeah, a connected part of the rest of the world.
Yeah.
Well, if you've enjoyed that kind of deep rumination, there is plenty more of it on our previous episodes. You can jump onto deepthought.podbean.com if you're really confused about where to go, but you could just scroll down in this podcast player of yours and pick a different episode. You know, there's fun stuff. Why not try 95? Have you tried 95 lately? Try 95. I think that's a good one. Why not? I don't quote me, you know.
Yeah, hold on. We might want to check that one.
I think that's a safe one. If you want to follow us in other places, facebook.com/deepthought, twitter.com/deepthought, get some notifications when an episode goes live. We're on Instagram. You can search for us. We're on SoundCloud if you want to hear our jingles. We're on Apple Podcasts. So give us the old 5-star rating if you happen to be hanging out there. It'll be very kind of you. I appreciate it. And if you have any questions or comments or topic suggestions, hit the old Gmail bag, send it to deepthought@gmail.com, and we will answer your questions.
Sure will. I have access now to the Gmail account, so I'll be right on there.
Have you explored?
No,
you haven't even logged into it.
No.
I
don't think I even care. Like, it's just the act of it that I really wanted.
Yeah. You complained for literally years that I didn't give you access. I gave you the access, and you haven't logged in.
It wasn't about the access, Nick.
No, it was a personal issue, I think.
Hey, I want to get your input on something.
Yeah, do it. Do it, girlfriend. Sorry, let's not.
I mean, you can do it. I can't.
Yes, queen.
Yes, queen. This episode be called Yas Queen for no reason. It's just about politics. It's just no real.
Yeah.
Maybe something. Maybe should something clearly election related.
I think maybe it should something clearly election related.
I stand by every word in that sentence. This is why I don't choose the titles. So this is an interesting. I don't know what it was. Not a dilemma or anything, but I had. So Emma and I went to the beach a few days ago, and we had a lovely time. And we went to stop off to get fish and chips on the way home. And we had an esky that we brought with us. And we went to get out of the car, and then Emma said, "Oh, I forgot my phone or something, or keys, whatever." And so I was like, where are they? She said, "I think they're in the esky." So I'm rifling through this esky with pockets, and I all of a sudden feel this really sharp pain, and I take up my finger, and it is covered in blood. It's like almost shooting out blood. It's like an insane amount of blood. And it turns out there was a steak knife in there from an earlier picnic that Emma went on.
Oh.
And it just like my hand just went my finger went right through this fucking
Why
knife.
did you not give me a warning that this is where the story was going?
Right. So I take out my hand and I go, "Fuck!" And Emma's like, "What?" And she sees my hand covered in blood. And so this is the thing. So it was Emma. it was Emma's esky. She left a steak knife in the esky, right? So my first thought was like, for some reason, even though I had clearly bigger things to worry about, I was like, my brain went, I want to blame you. I want to blame you for leaving in this steak knife like open in a bag.
Yeah.
Interesting that your brain kind of goes there, but I don't know, like it was kind of a murky one because it's kind of not her fault, but also it kind of is. I just wanted to get how would you react? Because I feel like you would react like if I let you put your hand in a bag and forgot about a steak knife. That you would be so angry at me for letting you do that. But I also
if I let you put my hand in a bag with a steak knife.
But I also didn't. I got over it pretty quickly. But I think I just wanted some acknowledgement from her that it was like, I just wanted like, oh, I'm sorry, I feel kind of bad. But I didn't get any of that.
Oh.
It was like no acknowledgement. And I'm not even sure if it was her fault. But it made me kind of sour.
Thank you for coming to me, the relationship expert. This is in my wheelhouse, and I'm glad that you have the confidence in my judiciary ability to decide this for you. This is sorry?
I just said, well,
it doesn't.
Skeptical.
Okay. Well, if you got other people to speak to about this?
I got no one, dude. You're my only.
So then let's cut the sass, hey?
All right,
let's turn that sass back down. It is a tough one. It is it's what I like to call an unforced error, in the sense that you did this to yourself. At the same time, there were factors in that if she hadn't put a steak knife in that bag, you would have not hurt yourself. That is undeniable, right? At the same time, you were doing the old, reckless rifle. If you hadn't...
By the way, Reckless Rifle brought to you by Pepsi.
Well, I was going to say Reckless Rifle, one of my favorite indie bands. If you'd been paying slightly more attention, you'd have kept your eyes open, perhaps this was an avoidable situation, right?
Yeah, I guess.
I suppose the instinctual reaction of like, what the fuck? Why would you... I think that's quite normal, because I think... in any situation where your body is like feeling pain or where you've hurt yourself or something like that, it reacts in an animal way, which is that I'm being attacked and something is doing this to me, right?
So that's what you think it is. You think your brain's kind of going into how do I work out who attacked me? So because my thought process in analyzing it after was that like I was searching for blame, where blame was so not important or not useful in that moment.
Yeah. And I think part of that process is that's the modern human brain equivalent of I'm going to fight back, right? Searching for blame is that I'm not going to punch the person that did this, but it is that I'm going to, accuse them of guilt here. I'm going to hold them responsible for what they did to me.
Right.
So as a response, I don't think that that's like abnormal or irrational. Well, it might be slightly irrational, but like it's not unusual. The question is ultimately, does the blame matter? Because if it was something that had happened deliberately, that she deliberately put it there to try and put a knife in for you, well then sure, it's like, okay, what the fuck, you deliberately put that knife there and you said, hey, have you seen my keys? I think it's in that right pocket. Just put your hand in there. Well then,
by the way, I'm not ruling that out.
If that was the situation, then it's like, okay, we need to have some words now. In a situation in which the causality is a little bit less clear, what does blame do? It is probably ultimately just a fleeting reaction and it doesn't need to be really dwelled on too much. I think the more interesting question is, why was Emma not sympathetic? Like, does she love you as a person? And
Well,
no,
well,
that's
now
not
we're
what I
really
meant.
getting into the heart of it.
That's
No,
not what
but
I was.
so I think because I haven't spoken to her about this.
This has all been in your head.
I just harbored resentment as like a grown man,
Yeah.
and then talked about it on this podcast before actually consulting her.
I think
which
that's
is what
fair.
I do.
You
about
want to know where you stand.
Yeah. But I think in her head, she was probably going through the same thought process. Like, should I feel responsible for this? And she's kind of stubborn as well. And she probably thought, nah. And if I say, oh, I'm sorry, I feel bad, then that's kind of me
Admission of
admitting
guilt. Yeah.
Guilt.
So it was a stub enough.
I think it was a stub enough. Not to be confused with a strong
Stroganoff. Yeah, I
Yep.
had the same thought.
Goulash.
A bag of stroganoff, it would be just as unpleasant to put your hand into.
Oh, yeah.
I think potentially this situation could have been deflated if she had been a bit more, oh, are you okay?
Well, that's the thing. I would have instantly just gone like, oh, cool. No worries.
Yeah.
But it's just this weird thing when you analyze like human psychology like that. Like a lot of human psychology when you're in like a fight or flight response, if that's even what it is, it's so weird. It doesn't make sense.
Well, it doesn't make rational sense. No, it's all like gut instinct and, body defense systems and that sort of stuff.
Yeah, it's so weird when your body acts primally.
Yeah.
It's like so out of your control. It's like,
Yeah.
This is the animal in me reacting. This is not me.
Yeah, I mean, this is a bit of a tangent, but it's in the same way, like I used to have, bouts of anxiety. And that's the same kind of rational thing where your body is freaking out. And it's
Totally.
like your heart is going wild and you're like trembling or you're like, struggling to breathe or whatever, the symptoms are. And you're like, as a rational brain, you're like, I know there is no immediate danger. I'm not about to be like eaten by a lion. But
Yeah.
my body is misbehaving.
Acting
It's
as if-
doing
yeah.
things beyond my control. And it's weird to have that sort of confrontation between your brain
Your mind
and
and your
your
body, yeah.
body. Yeah.
Yeah, it's scary because you've completely lost control because you like to think of your mind and your body as being kind of connected, which they are, but then also sometimes they're not.
Well, and that the body's subordinate to the brain, but it's not. Yeah.
Yeah. So actually, that did actually help. So,
Okay, good.
Thanks. I'll bring it up with her over dinner.
Yeah,
Say-
I'm sure she'll appreciate that.
Nick thinks you owe me an apology.